Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, and welcome to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I am your host, Joanna. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today, we are discussing how stress can sabotage our workflow, making us more unproductive, only to have more stressors keep piling on. Joining me today to talk about how the mind and body deal with stress is Dr. Lexi Harrigan. Dr. Lexi is a licensed physical therapist, resilience coach, and founder of Pelvis Power PT, a concierge physical therapy practice based in Dallas, Fort Worth. With nearly 2 decades of experience in women's health, chronic pain, and oncology rehab, Dr. Lexi blends clinical expertise with trauma-informed care to help individuals and organizations navigate stress, grief, and burnout. She is also a professor at the University of St. Augustine and a published author, using her voice to empower people to take radical ownership of their health and well-being. Dr. Lexi is passionate about building trust-based leadership, emotionally intelligent workplaces, and sustainable wellness strategies for high-performing teams. So, I'm excited to learn from Dr. Lexi's expertise today. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
So we're really glad to have you here, and I wanted to start out with a couple of introductory questions. First of all, could you tell us a bit about your background and what compelled you to pursue your career in physical therapy?
Yes. So originally, I had surgery on my knee in high school and went through physical therapy and had an amazing physical therapist that told me about the profession. And I was like, wow, I want to do that when I grow up. And so I pursued it straight out of high school. I went, kind of developed my cores, my core classes and things like that to lead me to PT school. And then I was able to matriculate through that fairly quickly. And then I got into women's health several years later after having my son and having my own issues because he was 10 pounds, 1 ounce when he was born. And so once I went to pelvic floor physical therapy for that, I was like, you know what? I need to help more people like this. And so that's how I got into that as well.
Amazing. That sounds like a really interesting career, and it's obviously developed and sounds like you're doing some amazing work with people. So thank you for sharing all of that. My next question for you is, what are the biggest misconceptions that you've heard about stress?
So some of the misconceptions that I've heard about stress is that all stress is bad. And not all stress is bad for us. We need a balance of tension to motivate us, to help us pursue better and greater. So we have to be able to hold the tension between challenge and mastery. Because if it's too hard, we quit. And if it's too easy, then we get bored and we get complacent. Another misconception would be that productivity equals busyness. And just because you're doing things doesn't mean that you're productive. And another thing that I also hear a lot and see a lot, especially in my practice and in dealing with people, is that we often believe that stress only affects the mind, but it also affects your body. It's not just in your head, it's in your jaw, your breath, your posture, even your pelvic floor.
Yeah, wow. That's really interesting. And I think we're going to go into that a bit further in the podcast. I wanted to just say, when you mentioned productivity equals busyness, and it doesn't, that's so true. I really experienced that in my own life because I do a whole range of different things, and I'm, generally a very busy person, but I'm not, particularly productive in any of them. I just kind of dip my toes in everywhere, so to speak. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
So To get started, we wanted to do a bit of an icebreaker segment. This is Have You Met Dr. Lexi? So, first of all, do you have a favorite book?
Yes. So my favorite book, I actually have two right now. I love The Garden Within by Dr. Anita Phillips. She, the way she masterfully pairs what's happening with our heart and our mind and our body, and really pictures how the neurons mirror trees and the seeds. It's incredible. So I really love that book. And then a book I'm reading now that I really enjoy is Your Body is Your Brain by Amanda Blake. And she gets into a lot of neuroscience and how the things that are happening in our bodies really impact our mood and our decisions and how we feel about different things. It's really great.
Yeah, fantastic. Those are some great recommendations. Do you have a movie that you've enjoyed recently?
Yes, we've been kind of on a movie run here recently. It's been a good summer for movies.
Hmm.
The most recent movie we saw was the live action of How to Train Your Dragon.
Mm, yes,
It was
I
really
am
awesome.
yet to watch that, but that sounds fantastic. Are you listening to any podcasts at the moment?
Yeah, I really enjoy Marie Forleo's Everything's Figure Outable, like her
Mm,
podcast. She's just great. She has really great guests on her show, and she has really great insights about business and just interactions. And I really enjoy her.
fantastic. And do you have a role model? This could be somebody in your personal life or it could be on a professional level.
Yes, I would say my main role model would be my mom.
Hmm.
She is an amazing woman. She's a world traveler and she loves community and hospitality. And she's very independent and very um, goal oriented. And I've just learned so much from her. And I aspire to be like her when I grow up because
Hmm.
she's nearing, I won't tell her age, but she's nearing her 80s and she's
Hmm.
still traveling the world and doing all what she wants to do. And I love that for her.
Oh, that's fantastic. And finally, is there a class or a course that has inspired you?
Yeah, I just went through the YOS framework with it's it's founded on Simon Sinek's Start with Why, that book Start with Why, and it really just helped me hone in on how I lead, why I serve, and it was really game changing for me.
Fantastic. Well, we're now going to dive into our questions for this episode. So, to get us started, we've got a couple of little definitions and getting our understanding of the topic under our belts. So, firstly, how do you define personal productivity?
So, personal productivity is basically getting the right things done, not just
Mm,
more things. Making sure that you're doing the things that are valuable and most important that align with your purpose and values, not just doing things to be doing things.
yeah, absolutely. And secondly, how would you define stress and then also stress management?
So, stress is a natural body response to demands or challenges. And so that could be positive or negative, but it's just a natural response that our body does. It releases cortisol, adrenaline, that fight, flight, or freeze response. It's a natural thing. And
Mm.
with stress management, it's our response to stress, how we do it. When we do stress management well, we respond in a more balanced, regulated way.
Absolutely. So, in that case, how would you describe the relationship between stress and productivity?
So, with stress and productivity, stress hijacks your focus. It hijacks your clarity, hijacks your logic. It's not just stealing your peace, but it's also taxing your creativity and your clarity.
Mm. Absolutely. Interesting. Okay, so going back to what I was saying before, what actually happens in the body when we experience stress, and how do different people experience it differently?
So, in the body, it's so one thing we all have to understand is that everything is connected. Nothing in the body happens as a silo. And so in the brain, the amygdala, which is the control center for emotions and our fight, flight, or freeze system, that's highly activated when we're stressed. And it really shuts down our prefrontal cortex that handles our logic and reason. And so as a result, then it increases our tension in our muscles and our body. Our breath becomes shallow. We can experience fatigue. There's a lot of other responses that we can have. Rapid heart rate, decreased digestion, because that slows down in the sympathetic nervous system response as well.
Interesting. And do you find that people, report to you different symptoms that they experience when they're highly stressed?
Absolutely.
Mm,
Everybody's different. And typically, what I like to say is that what you don't talk about and communicate, your body, it will come up and out of your body
yeah.
in pain, sickness, illness. I mean, oftentimes we think about anxiety and depression and things like
Mm,
that, but there's scientific evidence of showing that individuals that have a lot higher stress will have higher blood pressures, higher risks of heart attacks and strokes. There's also pelvic pain, as well as like pain with intercourse. It can disrupt
mm,
your digestive system. So you may go too much or not go enough.
mm.
So it can be very disruptive to our bodies.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I can imagine that if stress is really impacting your body, it sort of becomes a vicious cycle of, well, I'm sick now, so I can't work. So I'm getting more stressed because, my tasks aren't getting done. I imagine it would be a tricky cycle to be in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Interesting.
It definitely does impact our productivity and our ability to just have clear decision making, right?
Yeah.
So when your nervous system is more ramped up and you're kind of in that fight, flight, or freeze in that survival mode system,
Mm,
then think of how well you make rational decisions. You're making decisions out of fear versus logic, and you may make the wrong decisions based on the stress. So you might, you know, maybe overwork or underperform based on how you're feeling.
yeah. Interesting. So, in what ways does stress sort of shift the way we think and focus? And then, what decisions are we making in a typical workday that might be really affected?
So it can it can cause forgetfulness,
Mm,
irritability, physical pain, and then also when we have this forgetfulness, it's kind of like you have a hard time prioritizing what's important because you
yeah.
just see all the things and it's like, well, I got to do this and I got to do this and I got to do that. And so when you're spread so thin, you don't really give your 100% focus to this or that. It's just kind of, I'm just going to do just enough to get by because you don't have the emotional bandwidth to do extremely well and really dedicate your mind to that. And then you're
Mm.
not able to be creative because that is really shut down because you're in more of a survival mode.
Yeah, interesting. I've found that before, I think, because sometimes you sort of look at your task for today and you open up, all the apps or the software or whatever it is, your emails that you have to use for work. And I sort of make the mistake sometimes of opening them all up at once and seeing everything that I have to do and then just kind of shutting down and being like, oh, I no longer know what to prioritize anymore. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it can also like look like perfectionism and procrastination, right? I
Mm,
just want it to be right. I just want to be right. So you never put it out. You never finish something or you avoid it altogether because of, you're afraid it's not going to be quite right or you're not sure where to start or you can just work too much
mm.
also.
Yeah, interesting. So, are there some differences between good stress and harmful stress?
Yes. So, like I talked alluded to a little bit earlier, so when we talk about
Mm,
good stress is more short term, motivating. It's kind of that tension of like, for example, if there was a basketball player and they were really good, they often enjoy playing with other basketball players that might be a little better than them, right?
yes.
That way it challenges them to grow and it pushes them to do better and think more and be more creative, right? So
Mm,
that's a good level of, that's a good stress. where it's challenging and demanding enough to motivate you to grow and to create and to be better. Whereas with harmful stress typically lasts longer. It's more of a chronic stress where it just keeps going and it's more draining. And harmful stress can be anything from traumatic experiences, dangerous situations, it can be abuse, it could be the death of a loved one and grief, it could be the loss of a job. There's all kind. It can show up in a lot of different ways, but it's when it's prolonged. Even a prolonged illness or chronic pain can
Mm.
also be a prolonged stress input into the body.
Yeah, interesting. I love what you said about the basketball players. I know I've experienced that myself when I go to dance classes because,
Mhm.
I've attended some dance classes and I have to attend some dance classes for reasons where it's not really challenging enough and I feel like I'm not learning and yet I love to dance. So I seek out classes that are more challenging so that I can grow because I want to see myself be the best dancer that I can be. So I totally relate to that anecdote you made about the basketball players for sure.
Yeah.
So, in terms of then good stress and harmful stress, how did those both affect productivity differently?
So when we have good stress, when we have deadlines and different things, and deadlines can kind of go one way or the other.
Mm.
Sometimes deadlines can be not great stress.
Yeah.
But when we have, deadlines and, someone's a little bit better than us, so we have to challenge ourselves to kind of meet that demand. In the workplace, we have, we set different KPIs and different goals that we have for the team, or we're trying to, how can we make this product better? Or how can I deliver this, information better? Or how can we, you know, where do we fall against our competition and how do we edge ourselves up ahead? All those things can play a part in the workplace. How do I, is my job challenging enough for me? Do I, like for me as a clinician, what kind of patients am I treating? There are certain, in my profession, I've been a physical therapist for almost 20 years. There are certain diagnoses that I can treat in my sleep because I've done it
Mm.
so much, right? And it's like, oh yeah, you had a total knee replacement. These are the things we need to do. And everybody has their different nuances to, what kind of things they need. But a knee replacement on a regular course of healing is going to do what you expect it to do.
Mm.
Whereas for me, something challenging would be like treating someone with chronic pelvic pain that have
Mm.
different levels and layers of trauma that we have to uncover and we have to talk about and we have to figure out, okay, now we know this method works, but this one doesn't. So let's try to, it's more of a puzzle for me.
Mm.
And so I think that when it comes into the workplace, having the work be challenging enough where it keeps you intrigued, it keeps you growing, it keeps you searching for answers. And that helps us balance between the challenge and mastery.
Yeah, interesting. And what about harmful stress? How does that impact productivity?
Harmful stress is draining to productivity.
Mm.
It's absolutely draining because if there's anyone who's ever been overworked, underpaid, had several bills, a family member sick or lost
Mm.
a family member all in the same, they might be having layoffs and things like that. You have all these things that are stacking up. And then if you have any kind of illness personally or any kind of pain that tacks onto that, it can really distract you from getting your work done because you can't bring your best self to work in that environment. And what ends up happening is things can fall through the cracks because you're not as focused.
Mm.
Additionally, you may, to try to escape, you may work too much to your own health detriment. So then you end up having to take off because you're burnt out. And that can also be like if you have to take more mental health days or you feel burnt out, so you're not being as effective in work, then that also impacts the work environment and the work culture. Because if you bring that stress and all that negative energy to the team,
Mm.
that's infectious. right? It's going to spread even if you don't intend it to, but it will definitely do that. And there's science behind that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think just the fact that it distracts you, there's so many different things going on and it can be really overwhelming at times. What do you think are some signs that stress is quietly sabotaging our workflow, even if we think that we're functioning just fine?
Even if you think you're functioning just fine, it can definitely impact like some different signs. You might find that you're having more tension in your jaw. You
Mm,
might find that you're running to the bathroom more often than you used to. That might be indicate some increased tension in your pelvic floor. Your breath might be shorter. You might be taking more chest breaths, more versus like diaphragmatic breaths. You might also assume different postures with your body because that impacts the stress can impact your posture and your posture impacts your stress. So you
mm,
might find your shoulders are coming up more. You're kind of more in a rounded posture because you're
yeah.
in more of a protective survival mode versus having more of an open and shoulders down and relaxed posture. So all those things are cues. Additionally, if you're missing deadlines or you're more irritable or you're more tired than you really should be even though you slept, or you're having a hard time getting to sleep or a hard time staying asleep through the night, all of
Mm.
those things can be triggers to let you know there's something not quite right in the system.
Yeah. That's really interesting what you say about posture. I think I've heard this from some psychologists that I've either like seen or interviewed that your posture can sort of tell your mind that something is wrong. So if you sort of open it up, you can even if you're stressed, you can kind of trick your mind into going, "Oh no, it's actually okay." Is that right?
That's absolutely right. So,
Okay.
in the body, we have this connective tissue called fascia. And fascia is
Yes.
amazing because it connects everything in the body, just our skin to our muscles, our organs. It connects everything. It's like the webbing. And within fascia, there's actually nerve fibers that connect to that autonomic nervous system, that fight, flight, or freeze,
Mm,
rest, and digest system. So it gives a lot of input into the brain about what we are feeling. And so if you try to like hang your shoulders down, hang your head, if you take kind of a sad posture and try to say, I'm having a great day, like it's
mm.
totally incongruent.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even feel right. It's like, no, that's not quite right. That's not what this is saying.
Mm.
Right. And so it's definitely like how we present our bodies and how we hold our postures absolutely affects our mood.
Yeah, interesting. So we've kind of talked about this already, but from your perspective as a physical therapist, how does the body hold on to stress? Obviously, we've talked about posture. What about like, are there even little things like typing speed that could like affect productivity in some way that you wouldn't even think of?
Absolutely. When you have increased stress, your typing speed actually does change.
Mm,
Like you will actually, like even just how you hit your keys. If you've ever had an argument and you were typing and then all of a sudden it was like, tick, 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 like
yeah.
all that's coming out in in your typing. So you will absolutely you can have increased tension in your hands, which oftentimes will translate into like carpal tunnel and
Mm,
tennis elbow and things like that because you've been holding that tension in your hands when you're doing your typing.
yeah, that's really interesting. So, speaking of that, what are some physical tension patterns or movement habits that people develop under stress and might not even notice?
So they might clench their jaw.
Hmm.
They might also hold their breath more often.
Yeah.
So even when they're like maybe responding to an email, they might be just holding their breath. They can oftentimes um, clench their bottom,
Mm,
just be like a whole butt clench, and they can just like hold that tension, which will also increase tension in the pelvic floor. Um, they'll also, um, like I said earlier, have their shoulders more raised up toward their ears or even forward. That is also a sign of increased tension within the body. Um, mhm.
Yeah, interesting. So, what then, if we're trying to manage this stress, if some of these things are happening to us, what are the biggest challenges that people face when they're trying to manage their stress? And what advice do you have for overcoming those struggles?
A lot of challenges that people may face is there's a lot of shame around taking a break and resting, um, because we really identify and can get our identity through doing,
Mm,
right? I'm a physical therapist. I do this. I do this. I do this, and I'm Alexia. That's who I am first and foremost. But because we can often um, attach our identity to a lot of things we do, then when we stop doing those things, we're not sure who we are.
yeah.
And we're afraid to rest because oftentimes conflate, we will conflate others' reliability on us.
Mm,
Sometimes we'll work ourselves to the point where we feel like the sun won't rise and set if we're not doing something, right? If I'm not there,
yeah.
nothing gets done. They'll figure it out, especially in the workplace. You know, most often if you walked out today, they would have somebody in your place before the ink dried on your
Mm,
resignation.
yeah.
Things will continue to move even though you're not there. So it's okay to take rest. People will figure it out.
Mm,
So there's shame around that rest. And then we also when we do rest, we often don't take a step back. It's like, well, I took off work, but I'm going to do 10 things at home. I'm not going to
mm,
just, hey, let me just see what's happening in my body. Am I holding tension somewhere? Do I need to exercise a little bit more? Do I need to stretch? Do I need to do some breathing? What does my body need? We don't often take a moment to listen to our body and listen to those cues that our body's giving us that say, hey, maybe we should take a nap. Maybe we should sit down. Maybe we should take a break, or maybe we should stretch. We don't often listen to those things. And what we really need to realize is that real strength is knowing when to pause and protect your peace.
mm. I love what you said about the team figuring out how to function without you. Like, the world's not going to end, the sun will still rise, it'll be okay. Because I can relate to that. Like, when I was in university, I was part of a society, as one of the committee members, and I went away on exchange for half a year, not quite, maybe a few months, but they figured out how to function without me, and that was actually a really good experience for them to prepare for when I was going to graduate and not be there anymore. So it was interesting. It was kind of hard to leave at the time. And I wondered, what's going to happen? How are things going to be changed when I get back? But I also trusted in my peers, and I knew that they would be able to do just fine because they're very clever people,
Yeah,
for
people will
sure.
figure it out, and it's hard because we really want to have more control. We want to,
Mm,
like, I have to be there in order for anything to go right. But you know, one of the beautiful things about de-stressing, and kind of taking off some of that long-term stress is delegation.
yes.
It's okay. You don't have to do everything. Other
Yeah.
people are very capable. And even if they're not as capable as you think they need to be, how are they going to learn if you don't let them?
Mm. Exactly. It can be so hard to delegate if we are caught up in that, feeling like we need to have control, or, it makes us end up being like micromanagers of the people on our team. And we don't need to do that because they're clever people.
Exactly.
So, how can companies then? I mean, we were talking before about how you can bring in a negative emotion or a negative motion into the team because of how stressed you are. But how can companies develop a culture that really promotes wellness?
I believe that one of the big things that companies can do is listen to their people, right? Do surveys, understand what the needs are so they can be sure that they're meeting the needs of their teams and their workforce.
Mm,
Oftentimes there will be different initiatives. Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then it may not translate as to the team members as we're trying to help you. It's just like, this is another thing you're giving us to do versus, hey, where are the gaps that you see? What are you feeling? having these one-on-ones and having, maybe a task force to dissect where are we lacking here? Are we finding that some of our teams during certain times are maybe taking more mental health days, or maybe they're needing mental health days and they're not taking it, right? You shouldn't have individuals that have 400 hours worth of PTO and they've never taken, like, no, you need to go and take a break, right? Because when we can disconnect, we can come back refreshed and even have more ideas and have a better attitude around our work. And so I think finding out what the needs are of the team are, and then establishing a plan to implement the wellness strategies, whether it's training on compassion, training on breathing, allowing, having those benefits of mental health resources, bringing in a massage therapist for the team, when there are, some major deadlines and you're like, hey, let's all take a break for a second. Let's just take a step back and just relax and then hit it again. Yeah. I think those kinds of things can really help organizations really cater and help their teams.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. So can you tell me what you think the biggest myth is about productivity that you wish more people knew about?
I think the biggest myth that people think about productivity is that they have to do more in order to be productive. And it's really about doing what matters. And so whatever you're doing, it needs to align with whatever the goal is. The goal shouldn't just be to fill up the calendar. Are we aligning our meetings with the people that are going to give us the greatest impact? Am I scheduling my day, my daily routines and things like that are going to set me up for success for the day? Or am I not going to bed on time so that I'm sleeping in and then I'll have to jump out of bed, rush to work, rush to get ready. So now I'm already ramped up in my nervous system. So I'm just frazzled. So then the whole day starts that way. So it just kind of tumbles all throughout the day because I didn't have a moment to just start my day. I just ran through it. And so when we take a step back and decide what really matters, then every move we make that's in alignment with that allows us to be productive and allows us to get closer to our goal. We don't just want to fill up and do things, have just things to do to just say, oh yeah, no, I'm really busy. Are you any closer to your goal? Nope, but I'd had something to do every minute of the day. Like, what are we even doing?
Yeah, there's really no point in that. Well, we are going to move on now to our practices and habits section. Everything that you have shared so far has been so fantastic and such amazing advice. So I now want to ask you, what is a habit that you would recommend to people to practice and manage their stress?
One of the things I love doing, especially with my clients, is diaphragmatic breathing with a body scan. And so oftentimes we think about doing a deep breath, not from our chest, but from like a 360-degree breath. So you want your ribs to expand the front, the sides, and the back, and your belly should expand when you also inhale. And as you're doing that breathing, tuning into your body and seeing, where do I feel tension? Do I feel tension in my neck, in my shoulders, in my back, in my legs? Where do I feel that? And you locate that tension. As you're breathing, you visualize gathering that tension up when you inhale. And as you blow out, you actually visualize blowing that tension out of your body, allowing those areas to release and relax. It's a really helpful practice because it helps you tune into a lot of the cues that your body's giving you. And then over time, you're better able to notice, oh, hey, my shoulders are rising up a little bit. Let me bring my shoulders down. And we get more in tune with that. So that's definitely a habit that I teach often. It helps restore your calm, your posture, your focus, gives you a minute to just slow down and think. Even if you're going into a big meeting, you can center yourself, take a deep breath, release the tension, focus on the goal at hand, and move forward.
That's fantastic advice. Is that something that you recommend people practice every day or at certain times, like you said before a big meeting?
I recommend doing it every day.
Mm.
It doesn't take very long, probably 30 seconds to a minute. You can do it for 3 minutes if you like. But just taking that moment to tune in with what your body's telling you, it'll help you be a lot more preventative versus reactive when it comes to the things that your body's telling you. Hey, I'm tired. I should probably take a rest. You know what? I think I will sit down. Let me not do. Because oftentimes we'll say, "Oh, let me do this one thing before I sit down. Let me do this other thing," and then we never do. And so by taking that moment and just checking in with yourself, where am I holding tension? Let me release that. It allows you to really be proactive with your body, with your mind. Even if you don't feel a lot of tension in your body, but let's say you're having a lot of stress and you're not as clear, you're not as focused, you can still take that minute to breathe and refocus so that you can move forward.
Absolutely. Do you find that people struggle to do this or find any challenges when they're trying to do it?
I think people find it challenging because it's too easy. It's it's very simple, and it's like, well, it's too simple. I need something harder to, that I need to have more of a challenge, I would think.
Yeah.
Um, and it while it is a simple practice, it is very powerful because our breathing's connected to our autonomic nervous system. So when we take those deep breaths, we actually trigger our system to go into a more calm state. And so I think oftentimes when we're really busy, when we're really stressed, I don't have time to stop and breathe. I don't have time, right? But we do that.
Yeah.
However, when we ignore the signals of our body, when we ignore the signals that our mind are telling us, then our bodies will sit us down. So you can either voluntarily rest or your body will sit you down. You'll get sick, you'll have pain somewhere. There's a lot of things that can happen when you ignore and when you don't listen to your body. And so I know sometimes it can be challenging because it's like, I don't have time to do this, but I dare you to try it. I dare you to try it once a day, at least once a day, every day for a week. Just take 3 good, long, deep breaths, visualize that tension and release it. And if it doesn't change, if you don't notice any changes, you're exactly the same, then quit. Fine. But I bet you'll feel better and you'll feel different.
Yeah.
All your stress may not go away. The situations in your life may be what they are, but how you respond to them will improve.
Yeah. I've definitely experienced that phenomenon of, I've been working so hard, and you get to the end of something and then you get sick because your body is like, I can finally rest now. And I've always said to myself I feel like I haven't had just a day to rest or an afternoon at home for a while. And I feel like if I don't have that time to rest, something worse is going to come for me down the line. I'm going to, get sick. My immune system's going to be like, nope, I've had enough.
That's exactly right.
Can't do this anymore. Yeah.
No, that's
sure.
exactly right. That's exactly right. And you have enough body awareness where you're like, I should probably rest. I feel like this is going to go badly if we keep going this direction, right? Because your body is sending you caution, we need a break. You're not going to keep driving your car with the engine light on going, well, I know I needed an oil change, 50,000 miles ago, but I'm pretty sure we'll be fine if we just keep going. Yeah. We don't do that to our cars, but we do that to our body.
Yeah. Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. We just have to take a moment and listen to our body and give it what it needs.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your advice so far. I'd like to move on to the open mic. This is your chance to talk about anything you're passionate about. It doesn't even have to be related to what we've been talking about, but it can be, of course, because I can tell that you're very passionate about it and what you do. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I am extremely passionate about taking a moment, listening to your body and addressing, stress and resilience. And that for me has come at a cost. I lost my son. He was 22 months old in 2014, and he got sick and passed away. The doctors missed it. And so the lessons that I've learned, how to deal with stress, how to deal with grief, all these things have been born through a lot of pain and they've been born through blood, sweat, and tears. And so I wrote a book about my grief journey and the lessons that I learned. And it's called Sunny with a Chance of Showers. It's a story of love, loss, and hope. And I share a lot of the things that I've learned about how to be resilient and how to deal with the stress of loss and how to deal in relationships with that and how to support those who have had a great loss and how to help them navigate that. And so, yeah, that's what I'm really excited about. I released that earlier this year. And it's been a great journey in authorship.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing. That's obviously a very personal loss and personal thing that happened to you. And it's amazing that you're able to turn it into something that can help others and have a rewarding experience, kind of turn around out of that. Obviously, it's extremely impactful. And I will make sure that I link that book in our show notes as well so that the audience can have a look at what we've been talking about today. So I am going to have to conclude our episode soon. But first of all, if our listeners do want to find out more about you and your work, where should they go?
So they can find me at pelvispower.com. They can also get my book at alexiaharrigan.com and on Instagram at Dr. Lexi Harrigan.
Perfect. Well, I will get all of those linked in our show notes so people can just go and click on them super easily and find you and your work. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to interview you and hear about the amazing things that you do. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And to our audience, I hope you've learned just as much as I have in this episode, and we'll see you in the next one.
You have been listening to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by the Life Management Science Labs. Listen to episodes from LMSL's 10 Life Management Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or other podcasting apps on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel as it helps other people find it and us grow to bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website pp.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Joanna. Thanks for tuning in.